I beat on this drum a lot, and I still think tennis has got a long way to go. But I'm also proud of tennis as a sport compared to compared to the rest of the sporting world in the areas. But that's also very easy as a white male in the sport to say, you
Well,
know.
no,
But
I think it's absolutely fair, and obviously, women's tennis is the biggest female sport in the world. I don't think there's any argument at all about that. The WTA have done an incredible job to promote women, and it can get even better. We've got some rivalries starting. I think the players now are so enjoyable to watch. There's lots of different styles of games. Karolina Mukova, my personal favourite,
so
because she's
good.
got every shot in the book. I just absolutely love watching her play. But there's so many contrasts in styles. So even though, financially and maybe visually it's not quite up there with the men, it's getting there. So it's an exciting time to be part of women's tennis.
And before I move into the future, which because there's so much more we haven't scratched the surface, right? Is you work with teams. You've done quite a bit of work with teams. You mentioned there the rugby, and as part of, I guess I'm talking about the youth right now, people involved in youth teams. What can we do? And there's people listening to this right now that are going to be taking this message on board. What can we do to make them feel more heard, more seen?
The coaches or young
The
players.
athletes, the
Yeah,
athletes.
yeah. I think often it's just making sure the facilities are there for them. If I think about rugby specifically, it's a hugely kind of positive piece. It's already started with the RFU around the Rugby World Cup in 2025, and a massive investment, about 8 million, has gone into changing rooms, which feels like a really simple, not that sexy, what have you. But if you think about the facilities, a traditional rugby club not having changing rooms, not having any sanitary bins within the toilets, not having showers that are clean and accessible, not having enough changing rooms so women can also play on
Yeah.
a Saturday alongside the men. So sometimes I think it is almost those what feels like kind of not boring, but not that huge investment and whatever, but just equipment, coaches, facilities, etc. So making sure it is accessible, truly accessible, when women and girls want to come down and play. So I think we are seeing some changes there. And the thing that I do love is we do see a bit of a domino effect. If you see one sport doing it really well and almost shining a light on what can be done, and then perhaps other sports looking and reflecting about how they can make changes too to make themselves more accessible for women and girls.
I look at the performance team, and there isn't a female, I don't think, in the men's performance team. So that's difficult when there's not even a when there's not a physio, a fitness trainer, a nutritionist. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that there is not one female working in men's performance. So if it doesn't happen at the top, it's very hard for it to filter down. I genuinely
Yeah.
believe that. I think it has to happen across the board.
Yeah, I would agree on that as well. Yeah.
And then from a coaching perspective, it's just seeing it. If you can see it, you can be it. And I think it has to be we have to find ways to make it accessible for people if they do have families. Like that's not going to change overnight. Elliot's not going to start staying home with my daughter, with Florence, and doing all that stuff. It's just, culturally, it's just not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
He's getting better. He can load the dishwasher now. He's getting better, but it's small steps in the right direction. And I think this is one of those things where a job share needs to come in. For instance, to have somebody, with great expertise, but if they can only work 10 till 3 or whatever it is, why can we not, value their skills still and make it accessible to them rather than going, oh, actually, this person needs to be here from 7 till 7. And it almost excludes everyone from that experience. If if they've got, if they're a very high level coach, but they have got family, blokes included, they
Yeah.
need to be able to have the flexibility.
If you were to now give 18-year-old Megan that bit of advice, what would that advice be?
What, what I would say to myself is uh, invest in yourself fully, not just one aspect of yourself, but in the whole. But it's very hard to ask an 18-year-old to understand what that means.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
It is, yeah.
I think I would have said explore your academic mind as well. You know, pay attention, figure out what you like in that aspect of your life.
So how do we get it into people's world? And this is not just about equality from sexism. This is obviously there's a whole diverse range of things that this fits into. How are we able to do that without people actually personally experiencing it?
Yeah, and it's hard, isn't it, as well? Because I do feel there's an element of that kind of pushback then against what people might term as woke. I would class as being kind and compassionate and inclusive. I'm very happy to be all of those things. But there is a bit of a pushback because people feel it's being forced upon them. And that's the challenge, isn't it? We don't want to say to people, you have to have this because it's the right, because we're saying you have to have it. Actually, you want them to come on board because they see it is the right thing to do, but also it's good for everybody. And I think there's definitely if we're talking specifically on the sports side, there's an element of people feeling the pie's only so big, and if we give women more sports coverage, or we give it more funding, or we give it more investment, there's less for the men's sport that I truly love. And why am I paying my Sky subscription if I don't get to just watch more men's football? I don't want the women's football, is an example that I hear a lot. But actually it's explained to people that it is good for everybody, that it's good, that it will benefit for them in the long term. So that may be that it's a financial benefit, but actually equality benefits all people. It isn't just the smaller party that get more from it, or those that have been deprived of it for so long. And that's the other piece, I think, that people are becoming more aware of too. But there's a reason women's sport has had less audiences and has had less visibility, because it hasn't had the investment that men's sport has had for hundreds of years, 150 years or so. So there is definitely that redressing the balance, and that can be, I think, uncomfortable for people. So success of the Euros, and if it was talk specifically football and the World Cup, and Arsenal, the Emirates having packed stadia, we can suddenly overturn these arguments of no one's interested in women's football, the skill's not there, the audience is not there. Clearly, we can see that it is now, and I think that it's demonstrating that it is as good, if not in some cases, more entertaining to watch than some men's sport. But we don't need everyone. Everyone doesn't have to love all of sport.
No.
We don't have to love all of women's sport. It's just giving women an opportunity, the same opportunity. And in some cases, it's not about equality, it's about equity. So it's investing a bit more in the women's game or women's sport, because it hasn't had that investment. It's been deprived of it for so long.
What does the controllables mean to you?
It speaks my language, because at UCLA we called it the Bruin bubble. Everything inside the bubble was in your control. Everything outside the bubble is out of your control. It's a total waste of time, energy, and anything else to spend any time on anything you cannot control.